I'm going to demonstrate how to create a cinemagraph in Photoshop. A cinemagraph is a type of composition where one element of a photo is in motion while the rest is still. It's actually made quite a comeback after being first created in the 80s. Now, the process in Photoshop is actually quite simple, but the key to a good result is a good initial composition, which is a video. I'm not going to demonstrate that part here, but essentially the key is to create a composition with only one moving element. And that element should be in continuous motion. Some examples would be any liquid like the ocean, a record player, movement in the reflection of a window, blowing hair, or clothing. For this demonstration, I'm going to use a quick video I made using my iPhone. You can see that the camera is on a tripod so as not to introduce additional movement or else it'll just not work. The first step is to open the video file in Photoshop. Go to File, Open, select the video you want to use. Once it opens, you'll notice a new window pops up at the bottom with a timeline of the video. Now let's take a look at this video. As you can see, everything is still except the milk pouring into the cup of coffee. So before I continue with the Cinemegraph, I actually want to make a couple adjustments to the video, and I can actually make adjustments just like any still image. The first thing that I want to do is I want to crop the image to get rid of the fingers here. So I'm going to click the crop tool, and I'm going to decrease the size, and then I actually want to move the glass into the center of the frame. So I think that's pretty good. I'm going to click enter. The next thing I want to do is I want to adjust the color slightly. So I can actually go down in my layers and I can click an adjustment layer. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the brightness and contrast. And I have to move my layers panel out of the way. I'm going to increase the contrast so that the whites are whiter and the darker areas are darker. And then I want to increase the brightness so that the overall video is a little bit brighter. And then I'm noticing that the milk is really yellow, so I actually am going to go into the hue and saturation. And I'm going to reduce the saturation slightly. And I'm also going to reduce the hue so that it's a little bit less yellow. And I think that looks pretty good. Now we're going to actually begin to make the cinemagraph. So the first part is we need to figure out where we want the video to start. The key piece is that we can't have it start at the beginning. We're actually going to use that footage later on. So let's drag the marker along and see where we think is the best place to start it. So I can actually drag this along the video and I can see what I like. So I actually kind of like it right here. So I think I'm going to start the video right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to crop the video to where that marker is. So the next time that I actually play the video, it's going to start where I selected the starting point. Next, we want to make the video shorter for two reasons. One, there's a portion of the video that's going to look the best in the Cinemegraph. And two, we actually want to make the file size smaller. And in order to make the file size smaller, we have to have a smaller video. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag the marker along the video and we're going to decide where we want it to stop. So I think that around here is probably a good place to stop. And so I'm actually going to trim the video to where that marker is. So now we can play the video and we can see what it looks like. So since we want to make the video play continuously, we're going to want to put it on a loop. So in order to do that, we're going to click this little gear and we'll check loop playback. Now we can play the video and it continues infinitely. But what you can see here is that every time the video restarts, there's a little jump. And what we want to create is we want to create a seamless transition so that it looks like milk is pouring into the cup continuously without that jump. Now we want to create that seamless look of the loop. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on our layer, and then we're going to click Command or Control J, and we're just going to duplicate the layer. So what you can see down here in the window is that there's two of the exact same layers, one on top of the other. So if you play the video, you're going to see the exact same thing that you were seeing before. So what we want to do is we want to drag the second layer over to meet up with the first layer. So in order to create that seamless loop, we need to blend these two layers. And if you notice, the beginning of the video is the same as the end of the video. But if you play this, you'll notice you're still getting that jump. So in order to get rid of that jump, we actually need to blend the two layers so that it looks like it's just continuously playing. So in order to do that, we have to click on the second layer and we have to bring back the beginning of the video. Now, we're also going to want to crop the videos to the length of the first video. So we'll click on the second layer and we'll just trim the end so that they actually meet up, so they're the same length. Next, we'll create keyframes to fade out the top incrementally to reveal the bottom footage. So if we go to the layer copy, we're going to click over here, and there's various options that we can modulate the video. We want to actually fade the top out to reveal the bottom. So that would be opacity. It's kind of like a gradient, where we want to start at 100% opacity. So we're going to move the marker to the start of the bottom video. We'll click this little stopwatch to start the opacity, and we want to make sure that the opacity is set to 100%. Next, we're going to move the marker over to the end of the video. We're going to click the keyframe, and we want to change that to 0%. Now, if we move the marker along, you can notice that the opacity gradually decreases. Now, let's increase the size of this window, and let's play the video. And we can see that generally the video looks like it's on a continuous loop. The next part is to create a still image to restrict the movement to one part of the video. You'll notice that several areas of the video are in motion, not just the cup of coffee and milk. So what we need to do is we need to click the top layer in the layer stack, and then we need to press Shift, Option, Command, E, and right there we have created a stamp visible layer. This layer is a still image, just like a regular image of a photo that we would typically use in Photoshop. Now that I have a still image, I want to make some additional adjustments to my photo. So the first thing is, I find there's a couple areas that are distracting and I want to remove them. So I'm just going to use the Spot Healing Brush tool and go over the few areas to remove anything that is distracting. None of this is going to affect the video because all of these areas are going to remain still. I've made a couple additional adjustments including adding some dodge and burn in order to make the image pop. And the next thing I want to do is I actually want to bring the still layer all the way to the beginning. So now if I play the video, you'll just see the still image. And you'll notice that it continues to extend far out beyond the length of the video. So what we want to do is we actually just want to trim it so that it matches up with the length of the video. So now all of the layers are the same length. Now the last piece in our cinemagraph is to expose the areas that we want to show movement while retaining the rest of the still image. So the way that we do that is we create a layer mask just like any layer mask we normally would use. We can do that one of many ways. One is we can come here, click on the still image layer, and we can create the layer mask. And then we can use a brush and we can brush the areas that we want to mask. The easier way that I'm going to use is the quick selection tool. So I'm going to select quick selection tool, and then I'm just going to come over here and select the area that I want to be in motion. And in this particular project, it doesn't have to be perfect. There are some that should be better than others, but this one, not all of the area that I'm going to mask is going to be in motion, so I think it's going to be okay. This milk we want to be generally still, but we'll make some adjustments later on. So select and mask, and notice that we're masking the still image and not the image in motion. So we actually want to do just the opposite. So we're going to go over here and we're going to invert it. And I'm going to leave pretty much all the settings. I'll click Smart Radius. And we don't really want to feather or smooth or shift the edge because we really do want there to be some contrast there. I always choose the new layer with layer mask. So I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to go down and I'm going to look at my new layer. And I notice that it's still the same length of the original clip. So I'm just going to go there and I'm going to trim it down to the length of the other clips. Now I can play the video to see how it looks. And generally, I think we've done a pretty good job at making sure this area is in motion while the rest of the image is still. But as you can see, there's some milk that's pouring down that is in the area that we don't want. So what we need to do is we need to click on the layer, make sure we're on our brush tool, make sure the foreground color is white, and we need to paint white over the mask in order to make sure that that is not going to be visible. So I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. And then what I can do is I can actually move the marker throughout the video and I can see where I need to paint the white. So right here, over on that side. Okay. So lastly, let's play the video to see what it looks like. So I think that we've done a pretty good job. The last piece of this is to save the file so that it can be distributed on the web. So we're going to go to File, Export, Save for Web, and a dialog box is going to appear, and we're going to make some adjustments to the settings. So we want to make sure that the file type is a GIF. And the reason is that any of the rest of these formats does not support video content. We can leave the settings the same, transparency, and then we actually want to add diffusion transparency with dither. And the dither is going to make the image a little bit better quality. Okay, now we're going to look at the file size. And we want the file size to be as small as possible while retaining the quality so that when we do distribute it on the web, people don't have an issue opening it or viewing the content. So one easy way to change that or to reduce the file size is to reduce the image size. So I'm going to reduce it to 1000 pixels wide, and we'll be able to see in a second that the file size is significantly reduced as well. Great. Now, the last part is to look at the looping options. So oftentimes the setting once is set, but because we want the loop to be continuous, we need to make sure that it's selected at forever. And the last piece is we can actually preview the settings in a browser. And this allows us to see what it would look like when we actually do distribute it on the web. So it looks pretty decent, and it actually also tells us all of our settings down here. So now we can go back to Photoshop, we can click Save, and let's name our file Photoshop and Cinemegraph and Final. Now I think, yep, that's a great spot. Save it here. And then the last piece is we want to test it to make sure that it works. So let's go back to that file location. Let's locate the file right here. I can actually, if you're on a Mac, you can press the space bar and you can actually view it to make sure that that's the file that you want. But then I also want to make sure that it's going to work on the web. So I'm going to just drag it down into one of my browsers and voila. Now I have the GIF in a browser, so I know that if I'm distributing it on the web, people are going to see it just like this. All right, well, thanks so much for watching the video.